I think so. Okay, so my quick little recommendations on beam at this level in general is the less spotting you can do, actually the better. And the more you can spend time on low beams versus high beams, the better too, because it is safer and they can learn to be more comfortable and do things by themselves. And then teaching them how to fall off the beam is also a really important thing. And those are pretty, falling off the beam is actually a pretty easy thing to do with like games and playing around with them. And things like that. And so mostly what you guys are working on, especially in intro and level 1, is just balance, learning how to balance on the beam. A lot of different types of walks, forwards walks, backwards walks. Like usually when I taught the little guys, I would go through a series of different, I would start with especially if I had several beams, I'd line them up in pairs of 2, and they would do forward walks down and back, backward walks down and back. Learning how to do leg swing walks or passe walks. And things like that. And it's all just teaching them balance. I care about the technique and everything on all of those, but I care more about them just learning how to be comfortable and balance up there. And then what else? Sideways walks is also a really good one because that's hard to balance, especially in releve sideways. And I would also do grapevines where they had to cross in front, cross behind, so they're learning the different types of ways of walking on the beam. I would be careful though, because I have had several kids, especially in a high beam, actually walk off the back of the beam, walking backwards. And so usually when I teach them to walk backwards, I have them actually start and they have to touch, step, because that way when they feel the end of the beam, they're like, oh, there it is. So because I have had several kids just like forget what they're doing and just walk right off the back of the beam. So no quicker way to learn how to fall than that. So mostly those are my big things, is I would say try not to spot too much. If you can set up blocks, set up stations for them to feel things without having a spot, it's good. There are certain skills you're not going to be able to get away from spotting, such as side handstands on the beam usually. Because usually the side handstand, if you're not spotting it, they never learn how to go up to handstand. So we'll go over kind of how the best ways of spotting that in the level 4. Actually, it's all the level dismounts basically, is that side handstand, pirouette, or come down. So we can go over that too. So we'll start with falling off the beam. The biggest thing I would say with falling off the beam is even have them start on low beams and play games such as throwing the beanbag back and forth, because they're going to fall off the beam eventually. And so it's teaching them how to fall off. And it's always really important to make sure, even if you practice jumping off and rolling or doing a fall down, it's important to make sure the biggest thing you see when kids fall is they put their arms out. And that's the number one thing that gets kids hurt. And so you'll see kids who are really well trained in falling, immediately when they start to miss their feet or something, they feel like they're falling back, they'll pull their arms in, because it's ingrained in their heads from us, get your arms in. And so a lot of times they'll fall and put their arms backwards. That's a dislocated shoulder, dislocated elbow, broken arm. And so we always say, even the older kids, anytime we see that, we're like, get your arms in, get on them pretty heavy on that, because that's what we see most kids get hurt on. And even on bars, you'll see, for example, we had one of our level 4s at the Las Vegas meet actually hung off bars really bad on just a tap swing and flipped upside down, was coming straight to her head, and immediately you saw her kind of go like this and then pull her arms in. And she was completely uninjured. If she would have went like this, both elbows would have been gone. So it's really important to teach them to get their arms in when they fall. So I'd play different games with them, such as throwing beanbags. Hula hooping on the beam is always a fun one too. Jump roping on a really low beam or on a red beam with mats on it is also a good one, just to teach them how to do little things. And then they're going to practice falling, and then you can just kind of recognize if a kid falls and puts his hand down, just say, oh, try and pull your arm in, or try and roll out of it, or something like that. And jumping off the beams, off high beams, I think that's also a good thing to do, is setting mats up and just standing sideways on the beam and practice jump sticks or jump forward roll, land forward roll. So you're teaching them the different rolling out, or jump backwards, land into a candlestick off the beam. So it's teaching them all the different ways of falling. Because I think that's overall in our gym is kind of one of our weakest points, is even in the optionals, is everybody's so scared to fall off beam, but you're going to fall off beam more than any other event. And so if we can start to get these little guys more comfortable with falling, I think it's going to make tremendous gains in our overall program. So
even on floor would just
yeah, the side rolls are great.
Okay.
Just running up to a wedge and doing I always call them ninja rolls, because I coached boys forever, and I thought that was cool, where you roll sideways. Jumping and then rolling is a good thing, hitting feet first and then rolling. So they learn that when they're falling, like a lot of kids, they'll fall if they're falling like almost head first in a ways. They'll immediately think, oh, I need to roll right now, when actually your goal should be to get your feet down and then roll. Because it's much safer if you can at least get one foot down and roll over than it is to try and go, oh, I'm gonna roll, because I've done that personally and crunched really, really bad. And I was like, well, I should have just put my feet down.
Would it bought you some time?
So yeah, it would have bought me some time or made the roll a little bit safer. So practicing the rolls on different things is a really good thing. Let me think, what else do I usually do? So a lot of walking, a lot of balancing things, a lot of balancing games, bean bags, hula hoops, jump roping, a lot of jumping off the beam games where they have a station where they're just jumping off and practicing a rollout or a backward kind of, well, not a backward roll, but a candlestick. All of those things are really good. And then once you start to actually get into skills, so like for the intro class especially, it should all just be walking and jumping on and off the beam. Like, is what I would work on. Because once they're comfortable, you can see when a kid gets up there and they're not ready to do anything except for walk. Like, because if you start to try and rush them into handstands and stuff, you're looking at it increasing the amount of injury by like a ton. So because if they're not comfortable just standing on the beam, how do you expect them to kind of reach their hands down and kick up or do anything? So that's a lot of that. So walking. The next set of skills I would actually go on to is like more pivot turns, where they're just practicing going like this, back and forth, because that is tough, and that kind of relates to exactly to that kind of a walk. It's the same kind of action, working lots of pivot turns. Because then it also teaches them, before going on any sort of half turns or anything, it teaches them that they have to be in releve to turn, because you can't turn unless you're in releve. So, and usually a lot of kids that, for example, Iceland's when they're learning their half turns, they haven't fully got the concept of releve first, so a lot of them will start with their foot flat and then try and like sneak it around if it's not really a half turn. So that would be the next step, would be pivot turns, kicks, and then kicks, because kicks kind of lead to everything else on beam. Such as, so the kicks I would work on is just stand up. You can do this, I'm not going to kick. So front kicks and releve, trying to be up in releve. And what we're really looking for here is hands back and pressing back, because what happens, this stabilizes the shoulders and keeps them from wobbling. And so usually when the kid falls sideways off the beam, it's because one shoulder drops. And so if you can figure out a way to press back, and when you're pinching right here, your shoulders are really tight and they're not really moving. The only way they're going to drop is if your body moves and not your shoulders. So they should be pressed back, and then high kick, just do a high kick. Just like that. And trying to push up into releve, pointed toes, that was pretty good. And then you can do side kicks. Hand position is exactly the same, just up and down. And this can all be done, I would say practice a lot of this just on low beams and red beams, and even the floor lines is good. And then a back kick. Back kick is probably the more advanced one, where they're kicking up behind them. And so this is all moving into like intro level 1. They can start working on some of this stuff. And then the next step, the hardest step, is your needle. Oh yeah, I know your arms are tight. And that's another thing. You know they're doing it right if they're holding their arms up. They're like, oh, it's getting hard, because it is hard to do it right. The next one would be needle kicks. And so needle kicks are done with your arms up. You start with them up, and you're just going to teach them how to do needle kick on the beam. It's just up and back down. And that's basically teaching them every part of almost every skill they're going to learn in the future. Like, it's teaching them to kick up, and it's in a safe way, and to land. So the goal would be to have our arms up the whole time. Straight body down and up and stand up. And see, it's even difficult for her, so she probably has a hard time sticking cartwheels on all the time.
So you call that a needle clip?
A
Yeah, we're
needle.
calling it a lever.
Lever, yeah,
Well,
same thing.
the lever's different because the pace is slower.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Lever, they
yeah.
reach down and then kick up? Is that right?
That would be good too. So this is like the more advanced step. So if I were to take it back a step, so this is obviously going to be, might be too hard for them. I know what you're talking about, like with a lever too, would be, I would actually have them start, don't lift this leg up and just put your hands on the beam. Have them start here, now put weight on your hands. Now see if you can lift your leg up. So a needle scale. So they just
Needle
practice. Yeah, this is kind of like a needle scale, where they
Oh,
just practice
scale,
that.
scale.
So they practice holding it. So, and then they can bring their foot down, and then up. And so that's it all kind of broken into different parts. And then you can slowly start to work on it. So the next step, what I would do is like, see if you can lift up and stop in a needle scale. Stop, and then stand back up. And that was like really good.
So a needle scale.
That was like awesome.
Start.
Yeah. So I would definitely start with that. I would even start with, so if I had like little babies, I would, hands on the beam, don't lift your feet up. Yep. I would just start with putting weight on your hands and standing back up. Making sure they can do that without falling. And then from there it's that, and then you lift the leg and stand. So it's breaking this, the needle scale is like your optimal, that's like the end result, because that's going to lead to handstand, the cartwheels and all that. It's breaking it down into little tiny baby steps and making sure all that's done well. It's basically teaching them how to transfer their weight from their feet to their hands and then back to their feet. And because that's all of beam, if you think about all the skills they're going to learn, especially even in level 4 and 5, none of their skills are really jumping skills that much yet. It's a lot of weight transfer.
And is just doing also arabesque, would that be one
yeah,
step?
Yeah, and then arabesque would be good too. Yeah, that's breaking it down just the end part a little bit. Just practice going here and back. And that's what I do a lot of times with just walking. Like when I do walks, I always include a passe walk usually. A stretch passe or coupe walk, which is a stretch, passe, kick. And so it's teaching them how to stay on their one foot for a while. And usually then I start to travel practice when they kick, push up into releve, and then step down. And that's part of usually my walking series that I have the kids do. But yeah, so even just going like this and back up is a good thing. And one thing you'll see a lot of, and that's a technical thing that's going to hurt them in the long run, is a lot of times you'll see, do one real quick, we'll see if she does it.
What?
Just do a needle kick. She doesn't. So a lot of times what you see is a kid will put their hands down and then they'll stand up and it's this. And that causes a lot of problems in the future. That's bad back hamstrings, bad back walkovers, bad cartwheels. And so it's really learning how to keep their arms up as they stand. And you can make that kind of a fun thing too. You can use bean bags, or we have those little washer eggs that are in the circles. We use those for the optional. So the optional still work on this all the time. They put stuff in there so they have to hold it and work on that. So, but this, then once they have this, then it's time to maybe start thinking, okay, we have got a pretty good needle kick. You see the weight transfer to the hands, back to the feet. That's pretty nice. This is all intro level 1. Then you start to think level 2 would be more of a like baby handstand.